Oh, we don't want this. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
There's some coming in.
Yes. I will close those doors, just.
Yes, for sure.
I'll call you. Oh, no, you're there, yeah, yeah. Just 1 second. Why don't you waste your time? Yeah. Questions for you for a week.
Is your laptop there?
It's also. It also, should be a part of my coaching. Yeah. Sometimes it just logs off randomly up there. It's very dirty. It's just in my command.
Yeah.
I think she did a bunch of tasks and reminders. So every day I go in, it has like, all the notifications is like 70, 60, 70. And so I mark them all because I get notifications from the office too, right, on a deal
Yeah.
or whatever. And then I open it the next day and it's there again. I'm like, fuck.
Get that in?
Like, so I don't know what I can turn, I figure if you look at it, you'd be
Yeah.
able to turn something off. Because. Yeah. Anyway, my one thing next week is to get Bria up and into my command. Speaking of which, what do I have to send an email to you to get her added on admin, right?
Does she have her own command account right now, or does she just use Ryan's?
Probably just uses Ryan.
Do you want her to have her own login?
Yeah, through mine, but I don't want to give her my
Yeah.
login because I have broker access, right? So I want her to be my admin.
So there's two options. You can have her put into like our system where she could do profit share. I think it's a $25 fee and then $25 per year to keep that up. Or you can just get her a guest account for command.
So that she could get profit share instead? What else do we have to do for that?
You go.
She just has to sign like the binding sponsorship agreement.
It's just comes to.
Yeah.
That's
It would still come to cover with.
I'm also, have you
It would come to
talked to
county with.
people who've done the Monica Reynolds, like,
Cover with.
Yes, Phil and Cena put their admin through it. And I think Andrew
Perkins did, that was like 3 years
I think
ago.
Grant did, but just
Who?
Grant,
Oh, right,
but I'd take that one with a grain of salt.
perfect assistant or whatever it is.
Okay, it's 10 o'clock.
Okay, I'm ready.
What?
I said, I don't want.
Okay. Share that.
And then will you do it so that people could just pop in rather than we have to?
Hi, how you doing? Because you're not represented, says you're not represented. You're not represented.
Morning. Can you guys hear us? Maybe.
Or his lawyer. Okay, I get the instruction, I'm sending to his lawyer. Because what you said, fair being, well, we come in and neighbors says. Yes.
Just show me where am I going next page?
Yeah,
This one?
so you can just hit the,
Oh, the arrow, easy.
there you go.
Cool.
Escape to unshare.
Yeah.
And then it's just that slideshow button to, okay, to reshare.
So
If you need me, just.
Okay.
All right. Now you're all good.
Will you close the doors?
Yeah.
just saying.
Good morning. Joanne, Sue,
Yeah.
can anyone hear me? They've just logged in and
Okay, and how do you?
Oh, there's a chat. Okay, we can hear you.
all right, but it feels weird just talking to the screen with no faces and I'm like, am I talking, or is anyone actually listening to me?
People might pop in as you're Joanne.
Hi, Joanne.
Oh, you're muted.
Oh, I'm listening to you. Sorry about that.
That's good. I just feel lonely because I'm talking to this couple that's on the screen.
That'll fill up as people.
Okay,
Stragglers.
all right. So she says, hello, everyone. And that being everyone being Sue and Joanne. I'm Susan Young. I am a realtor with Keller Williams. I am also on Ann's team. I'm a managing associate broker. Been doing that for the last year. And I have been voluntold to teach making and receiving offers. So I'm going to go through the slides, but I would love for this to be a discussion class as well, answering any questions that you have. I'd like to go over, like best practices, from a compliance standpoint of writing an offer, but feel free to ask me any questions and I figure I'll use that for direction on more detail. Yeah, Jessica said, just like, there we go. So there, you guys have been doing several Ignite courses. This is the overview. We're on section 17. So for making and receiving offers, I'm going to go through from a buyer's perspective first, because that's typically how we start off, and then we can talk about best practices for as a listing agent and receiving offers. It's our Y4C2Ts of KW. So agenda today that with the course outline is presenting and preparing an offer. I'm assuming everyone here is using Command to do, which I find for me, since using Command, it's great because the checklists are there. Kind of is a great way to, as a reminder for what you need to do. But I would always suggest that starting once you have your cut sheet of a property, and then you would get your property online document, because that confirms that the seller is the seller, that matches the cut sheet. I always start with IDing my clients. So I do that based on, I get their ID first because I'll need it for FinTrack, but because then I can also fill out like the BDBA, buyer designated brokerage agreement, with their current address and their details, and have it for FinTrack. The only issue with doing the identification with FinTrack form is they want the property address at the top. So however, so I have the specifics of when I ID'd them, and then when we write on a specific property, then I add the ID address in my form in web forms. I like to think of sales as the ability to gracefully persuade, not manipulate, a person or persons in a win-win situation. The one thing that I can tell new and old, like myself, agents that have been doing this a while, is you can never make a buyer buy or a seller sell. Like, so we're not here to strong arm people into writing an offer, or if they do write an offer and deal with buyer's remorse or seller's remorse. Our job is to help negotiate for them, but it's to guide them, right? So we have to be very cognizant when we're doing so. And I feel that that helps longevity in the business, that we're, here to help guide them. But I mean, it's their decision, it's their money, right? I even say that when I'm doing, CMAs and I have a client who's interested in writing a property, I do a CMA, I show them the numbers. And they're like, well, where do you think we should start? And we have a discussion about it, but I'm like, I always explain to clients, it's your money. Like, I can't tell you exactly what to spend. That's again, it's not persuasion for me. I mean, I can give guidance based on my experience with the market and where I think things will fall. And we also take into account in the last 2.5 years of what I call the crazy market, like, we have to be careful on what comps we're using. Even for that, I always tell clients it was like a roll of the dice. I'd have clients writing, they're like, do you think if we write 120,000 over ask, we'll get it? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, we didn't know that. Previous, as I call it, BC, before COVID, we had the stats and the sales to justify. If you took a house on a street and you looked at the 2 other houses that sold in the last 12 months, if they were roughly the same, you were going to get that property, in the ballpark of the 5,000-ish, 97 to 98% of list price. So we're back to the agenda today, okay? So a buyer makes an offer. Another tool that I have found in the last few years that I find has been helpful with even communication has been showing time. For the sense of, for example, I showed a property 2 days ago, and I got notification this morning that the listing agent sent out that they have received an offer and that they didn't have direction on their on the cut sheet on their SDBA of when offers are, when they were taking offers, which if you are going to do from a selling perspective, you have to have lawful instruction from your client. Everything should always be in writing. So I got notification saying, please, if you're going to submit an offer, have an offer in by 5 p.m. today. So then we would look at buyer makes an offer. Best practices, things that I do. I mean, again, with a combination of, having out of town buyers, out of province buyers, I do an introductory email with my clients, and I have all of the paperwork attached. You can have it watermarked. You can do that in web forms, watermarked of an APS, a BDBA. I've now added into my spiel. So I have an email that explains what a working with real estate industry is. Like, it's just a little blurb that I have, but I send that to my clients and I explain that this is the paperwork that we're going to go over when you're ready to write an offer. I want you to review it so that when we go over it in person or via Zoom, that if you have any questions, but I have my little blurbs. My philosophy would be the more information you can provide to the client, the better, right? To keep them educated and informed. So that's how I start my process with providing them that paperwork. And then obviously we're viewing properties, and then when they go to write a property, and then they've decided that they want to write on 123 Main Street, I'm going to do up the specific paperwork for 123 Main Street. And then I'm going to go through that in detail with my clients. So Sherry is here. Joanne, how long have you been in real estate?
Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. I got in 2018.
Okay, so you've done a few deals then.
I have, yeah.
And Mike, I don't get to see your face. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Mike, you got your license last year?
Yeah, I wish. 2000.
Oh, that's Mike Arthur.
Yeah.
I only see Mike and no face. Oh. Yeah, so as far as with your buyer makes an offer, I find again that this is discussed in the slides here as far as communication with the listing agent, right? Now, whether that's via text or phone or through showing time. I know there was, lately there's been a lot of chatter on like our social media platforms, like with NSAR and stuff about, why we're not communicating with one another. However, phone call is great, to have discussions, although having an email chain or showing time or, that I asked when offers are being presented, or like, then I have written record of our conversation, of our correspondence. So I do think that that's important.
So Susan, have you ever had like a conversation with an agent and asked them, hey, listen, just follow up with a quick email and I'll officially respond to you in a quick email, and have them go, nah, no, I'm okay.
Yeah, so you didn't start the conversation. Like, that's more what I would do with my client, right? I would follow up with an email as for our discussion. And, I have sent you a list of home inspectors and you want Uncle Bob's cousin's dog friend Jeff to do the walkthrough with you. As per our discussion, I recommend that it's an important investment for you to spend the $450 to have a home inspection done on your $600,000 investment. However, as discussed, you are going to sign a waiver that acknowledging the fact that I recommended that you do a home inspection, and that you chose not to, or you chose to have Uncle Bob's cousin's next door neighbor's dog friend do the home inspection. My first broker was, God rest her soul, she's passed away 5 years ago. She taught me a couple things. One was, he who has the thickest file wins. And again, I can date myself based on the fact that we literally wrote, and Mike can attest, write notes on the inside of our file of, to keep track. Now, obviously with emails and now with command and communication, like, I think my brain always thinks, if I'm standing in front of a judge, how can I present my case? So I use the example to people, and Sherry was one of my mentees, and, as a broker now, you're standing on the front lawn after doing your viewing, and your clients, especially in the last couple of years, we're getting into multiple offers. So like, no home inspection. We're going to waive that. Like, and I'm like, well, I think you should, and they're like, no, we don't want to do a home inspection. They win the offer. The house closes 6 months later, massive issue, basement floods. Good. First person that's getting blamed is the realtor that has errors in an emissions insurance, right? And if you read like the articles and the disciplinary, the first response from the buyers, my agent never told me that. My agent recommended that I don't do a home inspection, so that because we were going to be competitive. Actually, here's the email that I provided you, and here's the waiver that you have signed saying that you declined on doing a home inspection. So that's how I think. I'm standing in front of the judge. Those are the things that I'm going to provide to say, I did my job. And I realize from a compliance perspective, like we have our NSREC compliance. I also, know that Anne has a couple extra checks and balances that she puts in place from a Keller Williams standpoint, so from a compliance standpoint for paperwork. But using, for instance, that waiver as a perfect example, it's not only to protect the client, the buyer, but it's to protect you as the agent. Like she's, Anne's goal is never to make sure that we have the most paperwork, that when agents come to Keller Williams, you're drowning paperwork and, we're trying to make your life difficult. It's that we are professional and we have our checks and balances in places for worst case scenario. I just happen to have a brain that is a worst case scenario, always have. Like some people don't, right? And I think that these checks and balances are very important. You write your offer. It goes to the seller. I mean, I would say to you, like, because you're typically going to email the offer. I am going to ask for a confirmation that they received it, or I'm going to follow up with a text, or again, like Sherry, you're discussing agents, like you could call them and say, hey, I got your offer. Can you just let me know you received it? And then the seller typically, and this is pre-COVID or depending on what price point you are in right now, you get one offer and then the seller has 3 ways to respond. They can accept, they can counter, or they can reject. I am always going to have a conversation with my seller based on the rejection, to the point where I almost never want them to reject, because I'm like, again, our job is to take the emotion out of the transaction and just flip their brains into putting it as a business transaction, because this is their home. They love their home. They're emotionally attached to their home. So they get a lowball offer. Something comes in $30,000 less than what they had listed for. They take that personally. They're hurt by that. It's our job to explain that, this is a buyer who has no emotional attachment. They're looking at it currently as a business transaction, and they just want to get it for as low as they can get it. They just want to test the waters to see where you want to be. So what I recommend is that you go back with a counteroffer based on where you want to be. Tell them where it is. And that usually can get them, rather than reject it because they're hurt or pissed off or what have you, that we can go back with a counter. And then you only have 2 options with a counter. It's accept and it's reject. There's no countering a counter. NSREC is going to tell us that we are not allowed to have verbal negotiations. You're not allowed to call up the listing agent and the house is listed at $599 and say, hey, would your guys will they take $550? Put it on paper. Again, I go back to he who has the thickest file wins. However, then you're following the lawful instruction of your buyer, but you're putting your offer on paper. Sure, things can be negotiated as far as the conditions, with the exception even of like, closing date, but it can be based on getting the permits for the pool, or, all those things that we can make. If there's tenants, that we have the leases, you can make that all conditional as part of the offer. But you have to do it on paper. And then when it comes to the counter, again, when it comes back to you as the buyer, they can only do one of 2 things. Now, does it happen that the discussions go on about the washer and dryer that was excluded, but it was a deal breaker and the clients really wanted it? I would say to you, if that were to ever happen, which it doesn't normally, because what you're supposed to do is, reject the counter, rewrite a new offer. The only issue with rewriting the new offer is then you're opening it back up to the masses. You're starting over. Whereas when you're in the counter stage. So I would say, even from a listing perspective or from a buyer's perspective, let's say the washer, came back at the price is listed at $599. It came back at $590, purchase price to be $590, and washer and dryer excluded from the agreement to purchase and sale. And that was a hill that everyone wanted to die on. And the buyers wanted it, and there was a discussion. I would just recommend that the listing agent reissue the counter. No scratching out, because then we get into the whole, you know, when you scratch something out and initial it, but the other party doesn't initial it, then you think, your buyer thinks that they have an accepted offer, and they actually don't. Right? So the scratching off, initialing, changing things is not a best practice, and it shouldn't be done. So I would say a reissue of a counter offer would be the best practice. People used to do it when we used to negotiate prices back in the day. Even banks red flag that, right? As far as a scratch out of pricing. Then as far as the offer process goes, obviously, if you get the offer gets accepted, then you would start your conditionally accepted offer process for your buyer. Again, something that I do and that I would recommend, like typically the majority of us are getting things electronically signed. You know, it is required that our client always have copies of the agreement of purchase and sale of all the documents they've signed. Old school, when I got in, it was just phasing out, but they had the 3 sheets that you signed on it. One copy was for the listing, one copy was, you know, for the buyer, one copy was for the realtor. So they do get a copy when they sign it back through DocuSign. However, best practice, in my opinion, is you know, emailing your client saying, like I have a congratulations on your accepted offer. Here are the next steps. And I break it down, because although we can do this, you know, 10 times, 20 times, 30 times a year, your client might have bought and sold 3, 4 houses over the last 20 years. But it's our job as the professional to guide them through, right? So providing them all the documents, also, you know, having them, I like to control, like they pick their lawyer, I send it to their lawyer, I CC them on it so that the communication with the lawyer, but then I know that the lawyer got the paperwork. Because if I just give it to my buyers and say, you know, your conditions are May 10th, let me know what your lawyer says, right? Did they get it to their lawyer? Like, are you sure? Were you on the email? If not, like, why not control that? And then worst case scenario, obviously, of rejection of the offer. A listing agent is actually, I don't know why, but they're not required to actually have to give you the signed paperwork back. I would recommend it as a listing agent that you always do that out of professionalism and courtesy.
We're not?
No.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So there was, again, let's use pandemic, you know, you get a listing agent who got 25 offers, right? And they were open till 9 p.m. tonight, and you sent over your offer. Crickets, nothing. You're messaging them at 9 o'clock, and then the next morning your clients see it go on the system as conditional. Like, to me, it's not best practice. As a listing agent, you should be communicating and, you know, with an email. It's work, it's extra work, but you also, that's your job, right? So I would recommend that as far as best practice.
Well, it's just good relations with other agents as well, because if you're good, it gets around. If you're bad, it gets around faster.
I agree.
Probably because you taught me that.
So when it comes to with this, as far as it says ahas, but I want to have a discussion. I want to answer questions. Like, I know everyone who's here has transacted before. However, this is being recorded, so there might be someone who is going to watch this who hasn't transacted. So if you have any questions or you want to have a discussion with that process, I'm happy to answer questions.
The process itself seems fairly straightforward, but there always seems to be some nuance within the process, especially if the agents that you're working with on the other side of the transaction don't know or understand what that, and I'll say it, legal process is. And I find that I end up in situations where an agent will reach out and say, hey, listen, my client can't go above 850. Will your client accept that? And my reply is always, I appreciate that you're asking on behalf of your client. However, I cannot give comment on any offer that my client will or not accept. They will only be reviewing offers that are submitted in writing, but I'll be happy just to present that to them once we receive it. And that's what I say, but I'm like, part of me wants to kind of go, really? You're
No.
really asking this?
No, well, again, what your answer is the way, put it on paper. That's what they have to do. And I understand. And again, it's just about how we conduct ourselves, you know, in a professional and kind manner, right? With real estate, like any industry, we have all types of different personalities, right? So you be like my mother says, God, I'm quoting my mother, treat others how you want to be treated, right? So you do this with professionalism, with integrity, you know, as you know, even from a broker standpoint now, of having to talk people off the ledge. I'm the first to admit that I get emotional when like I explained earlier, that it's our job to take the emotion out of it. But I get emotional based on, you know, I think another agent's being a jerk. I think the buyer or the seller on the other side is being a jerk, like, and it's frustrating. However, gotta take it in. You can have a discussion. You can be a sounding board for your client. Like, and that's, you know, what we do from a broker's perspective too. We have to be a sounding board. However, I'm going to agree with you, Sherry. It's just like, just do the right thing. And that is the right thing. Are we going to be able to change everybody? No. However, by giving your standards of this is how the process works and this is what needs to be done, I think is best practice.
Okay.
I wanted to share, Susan, I was in with the other brokerage, and I was in for about a year, and I had this buyer that had come through a property, with the brokerage I was with. Anyway. so-
Sorry, Joanne, is this your listing or your buyer?
It was the brokerage's listing.
Okay, and you had the buyer and went through.
Yeah, so anyways, they reached out to the office. So anyway, so we went and did a couple looking, and I met his wife and I met his kids and got the ID and the address and did all the right things. So we offered on a property in Cole Harbor. And so as time went on, we were, here was going to be the deposit and then the inspection. I think we had about a week. Anyway, there was a problem with the deposit. And, you know, the bank, there was an issue with the account, yada, yada. So then the inspection, he got the inspection, he reached out, he made the arrangement. Last day, and he said he worked odd hours. So anyways, we were still meeting in between. Anyway, so I was trying to communicate with the other agent as best I could, you know, explaining by still keeping my clients' personal stuff. Anyway, so the inspection, he couldn't make it. We did the inspection, and then we gradually kind of like, there's something going on here. So it kind of fell through after about a little better than a week. And the agent, the sellers, the listing agent for the property that we offered on, his client was kind of like, what's with this agent? You know, what is she doing? And so anyway, the deal fell through, and probably about a year later, that same agent sent me a text for a newscast. This guy was arrested. It was all fraud. Everything was fraud. Like he had done this to like 14 or 15 people.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, I was like blindsided by all this, right? He was so good at what he did. And it really left me reeling because I mean, they were so good at this, and a young child and a teenager and his wife and the stories, you know, were so believable and so So at the end of it, and I had known the inspector from, when I had my business before. And so he knew me, he knew I wasn't this kind of person, but it really left me with all kinds of stuff, because he was so good at what he did. Yeah. And now talking about these realtors, you hear the stuff that we're sharing about meeting people publicly and making sure that they qualify. And, yeah, like you said, look at the worst case scenario. And I didn't see this coming, but he was very, very good. Well, I guess, because his wife must have been in on it.
Well,
Very
and
good
I
at
would
what-
tell you that's a perfect example of, whether you're experienced or you're new in the business, you have at Keller Williams, you have a broker too. Actually, you have a broker at every, brokerage that you go to. And essentially, because the broker is the head honcho, right? Like, broker is supposed to be in the know on everything. So if you ever get spidey senses about something, like, and Anne has systems in place, there are 6 of us, right? So that we have our hotline, and now I wouldn't say it's 24/7, because some of us are not going to answer the phone at 3 a.m. Most of us shouldn't. However, anytime you think things are weird, and I do it, I still do it. If something seems off, or that I feel my spidey senses are saying, this is not right, I want to bounce it off my broker. I want to get advice, and I want to keep them in the know, rather than, it's so much easier to help with a situation before or during, rather than after. Now, Joanne, that's a situation where, like, a professional criminal can fleece any of us, right? However, if you're doing your checks, if they gave you ID, and you saw them face to face, and you've done what you can do. There's always going to be horror stories. However, I would say to you, like, never hesitate to reach out and get guidance.
I do have to say, I appreciate the other agent sharing that information with you.
Mm,
That had to be some kind of, okay, all right. This wasn't a me thing. This was the situation, and him and I were both, or he, she, whatever, we're both taken for a ride
Yeah.
by this person. So I have to commend the other agent for reaching out to you and kind of doing a brothers in arms or persons in arms scenario. Like, we were in this together. We were both kind of taken
exactly.
by this person.
Yes, yes. And I did appreciate that. And because I would have never known, it's like, hey, look at this newscast, do we know this people? Oh my God, yes, we do. Yeah. So we were all taken in, all of us. Yeah.
And unfortunately, Joanne, it's a story that's going to go in your your real estate table book, right? Like,
Yeah.
I have a story for almost every situation that I can use as an example. And that to you is, for you, it's an example of, like, when you get pushback, like, I don't want to give you my ID. And I'm like, well, actually, this is part of the process. And, this is federally mandated. And, I'm just following because my job as a professional is to make sure you are who you are.
Yeah. Always worst case scenario. My very first client ever. It took us a year to find the perfect property. And on the morning, we did the closing the night before, and on the morning of the closing, her husband died. And it was just like, yeah, so I've got all these, but that follows me in my life. So I always think worst case scenario and plan accordingly.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so as far as, so we talked about preparing the offer. I will mention, again, not necessarily for everyone here, however, Keller Williams, we have put systems in place so that if you are new, you should have been assigned a mentor, or you're on a team. So a broker should oversee your paperwork. Within, at least the standard is 6 deals. So your first 3 listings, your first 3 buys, so that eyes are on the paperwork. And typically, if you have been assigned a mentor, that mentor is also going to be a designated agent so that you can converse with. So they should be on the APS So that agent should also see the paperwork. Now, if your mentor is not a managing associate broker, then Sherry Harding is the broker. So I would recommend that, you know, if you showed a property and your client said, I'm going to think on it, you should go home and you should do up the paperwork, even as a practice, right? And then you can send it to the broker for review. And then, you know, you're meeting with your clients tomorrow at 5 and they're going to write on the property. And then you can make sure that it's better to have things looked over and checked prior than to actually have a mistake and go back and fix. However, it can be done. We can still fix mistakes. So prepare to write an offer, ensure the property is still available. So I would say to you, typically, like if you're going to have a showing, I would think agents are communicating to you. However, you have to be cognizant of the SOBP, sale of buyer's property, right? So it says active, but it would also say yes or no on Filogix or Paragon for that. Build a rapport with the listing agent. I think we've already discussed this. Like Sherry says, like that, you know, longevity in the business of how you conduct yourself is to me building your rapport with an agent. The inquire about activity. I mean, you're allowed to ask questions that they don't have to answer them. For me, for inquiring about activity, if I've got a client that's interested, I go into showing time and see how often it's been booked. Like just look at how many times it's been blacked out. You know, as far as why an offer fell through, again, that sometimes is often we put it as instruction, like on agent remarks now, right? It says like first offer fell through because client couldn't get financing. Ask questions about seller's motivations, or you're not allowed to do that because that would be just disclosing, you know, fiduciary duty, your confidences. However, if the seller's client has given, the listing agent has given, you know, we are relocating and we need 15 of July close, you can tell everybody that, you know, you can, but that can be something that's discussed. How they want to receive an offer. Again, typically I would say, like I always email an offer. Some people do it through DocuSign or Dotloop. I kind of old school. I download it and send it over to them. Obtain the buyer's pre-approval. Obviously, you are going to want to know who your client is using for their lending purposes, and you probably have already been in communication with them, or ask that they provide a pre-approval letter because you want to know what your client can spend. And then as far as documents go, obviously, you know, you can check documents tab. However, nothing does need to be provided till it's written in an offer. So you would have to have permission from the seller to actually, you know, put the heating costs, put the property taxes, all that stuff prior to an offer and putting it on. I put it on Paragon under document tabs, and I also set it up so that when you book a showing and you get your confirmation, my documents also send to you that when you booked a showing on my property, so you have those documents prior to even viewing the property. I produce a comparative market analysis. I think that's very important. I mean, we also, you know, we in Nova Scotia have majority of the consumers are on Viewpoint, right? So they have access to the information that they can see what houses have been selling for. I think is realtor.ca is lean. They at least put conditional now, but as far as sale information on there. And obtain a seller's disclosure document and other needed documents. So again, typically that would be written in the offer. And then that's part of your due diligence for conditions. Any other questions? Cool. So writing the offer, I feel like we've discuss that. You know, this comes down to, I would recommend Having checklists is what I would say. Whether you're looking at command or your process, like whether you're, if you're new and you're meeting with a mentor, kind of make notes of how they do it, have them talk you through the process. We have checklists from the office. I have checklists. The only thing I haven't done, which is my next step, is you can put checklists and tasks in your command so that you have your set processes in command as far as your tasks for writing the offer. So like I said, we've discussed this, having a broker review an agreement prior to executing it with clients is best practice. If you have a weird and wonky clause that needs to be put into an offer, reach out to a broker to discuss. We're typically going to want you to have drafted something, and then we can, so like calling and saying, give me a clause on this is not the best practice for you to learn how to do something. But there's also clauses on web forms. The broker team may be working on an office clause book. Or call Sherry, because she's got lots of clauses. No, just kidding, Sherry. She does. She's highly detailed. She saves things. She only needs to be told once.
Oh, nice little plug. Thanks.
So again, we're educating our clients. We're showing them comps. However, we're following the lawful instruction of your client. So when you go through the offer paperwork, you have to explain about deposits. You have to, when the deposit's submitted, you have to go through your 3.1 of all the conditions that you're asking for and when their due diligence is going to be. So when you go through an offer, you're going through this again with the clients. I handhold my clients, and I just have systems in place that I do it with every client. And my emails, I have templated emails. I mean, I obviously customize it. I go through it and change the dates, but I explain all the steps to my client, and that's best practice. And I would say to you, if you're new, you should be practicing. Like, list your own house and then do an agreement of purchase and sale on it, and then have a mentor review that. Like, don't wait until your first deal with your first client and you haven't even looked at an APS since you wrote your exam. So that's my best practice recommendation on that. We are professionals for a reason, and our levels of experience are all different. However, we have a job to do, and it's to protect our client. Talking through the offer, again, I used to do it all the time in person. Now I can do this with clients. So you review the contract, like, again, making sure they understand, but I even give them the paperwork previous, talking about the details. And then even after the offer is accepted, I summarize. It's a congratulations on your accepted email. The deposit will be due this. This is how we're going to do home inspections. We got to book a time. I've got an attachment of who my home inspectors are. You break down. If there's well and septic, I add that on to it. If it's a condo, I talk details specific about a condo. Yeah, that's what I would say. Presenting the offer. Now, for us, Nova Scotia, presenting the offer is giving it to the listing agent who is going to present. We don't line up like they do in Ontario, sitting in their cars in front of the yard, and then you go and sit with the seller. That's not standard practice here. If your client wants to include a love letter, they can do that. I typically, if my client is going to do that, I don't make it part of the agreement of purchase and sale. I understand premise of why some people do, because they want to make sure that it's presented. Although then that love letter is going to the lawyer, it's going to the bank, I don't know if that's necessary is to be part of an agreement of purchase and sale. And again, like I said, best practice as far as making sure that the agent received it, right? You want to make sure, and then you want to get communication back, whether it's been accepted or rejected, or there was other offers. Present the offer checklist, double check all documents, follow instructions, label all documents clearly. Command is so amazing for this. You know, like there are people that aren't using Command at KW. Like I would say that, and I'm not tech savvy by any means, but I have been using Opportunity since we got it. And I use the example of like, I opened an Opportunity a week or two ago and I was like, oh crap, the signed PDS, because it says PDS, it's right there, PDS, and the section for it. And I'm like, oh, it's my checklist, it's in front of me. I'm like, and the busier you are and you've got more deals on the go, you can just look and you're like, okay, I still need to do this, I'm missing this. Oh yeah, I've got to get the copy of the deposit that was emailed to me. I'm just going to put it in my Command. If you can upload documents and email them to the office, you can upload them to Command. And I'm telling this, and if my husband ever watches this video, he would tell you that I am not particularly tech savvy. If I can do it, anybody can do it, guaranteed. And again, the present, like what my recommendation as far as best practices is constant communication with your client, making sure you break down the steps with them and you do it in writing. Receive and respond. So I'm going to flip this as far as if you are now the listing agent on this. So I would say for receiving offers, first of all, how are we starting? Did you put showings, you know, you listed it on Thursday, showings to commence until Monday at noon, and offers to be in by 2 and open till 9 p.m. If you have that in your SDBA or on your input form that your client signed, and then that was the instruction. Again, if you're going to change, like worst case scenario, Monday comes along, you didn't receive offers, you know, you want to remove that. You could do up an amendment or an email from your client saying, okay, we're going to leave offers open for 24 hours now. Just again, you have everything in writing to say that we communicated this. I talked about showing time. That is a great communication. So when you write your SDBA, I don't know what number it is, but you ask about, you go through it with your client, multiple offers. How do you want to proceed? Do you want to tell the other side about multiple offers or do you not? I typically recommend that they do, and I explain the advantages and the disadvantages of doing that. Then you are required as the listing agent, you know, you receive an offer in hand, then you can go to the other people that have viewed the property and said, you know, we have received an offer. If you're interested, please submit by such and such a time. You have to have that's lawful instruction for communication for multiple offers. You then have to have lawful instruction to disclose the amount of numbers. So if an agent pushes on asking how many offers you have to have lawful instruction from your seller to disclose that or not. So it's a conversation that you have to have with your sellers. And I would recommend even getting it in an email as per our conversation with multiple offers. Your guy giving me permission to tell other agents how many offers we have in place. And they write back, I agree to that, you know, and then you have it. So then you could, so like if Joanne wrote an offer and on my property and I said, I can tell you, Joanne, that you are in competing. And then Joanne's going to ask me, how many offers do you have? And I would say, I do not have lawful instruction from my client to disclose the amount of offers. So and then we could get into philosophies of what the advantages and what the disadvantages are. But, you know, every circumstance is different.
I would actually like to know the pros and cons of some of them, even some of the more popular ones, like even if it's like broad stroke. Like I
Well-
know saying you're in multiple offers, it from a listing perspective is good, kind of gets people worked up a little bit, excited if they're want to reoffer potentially. But-
Yeah, there's advantages and disadvantages to being married to another realtor. So these can be Friday evening discussions that we talk about. People must think we're so boring. So Chris has the philosophy of, he feels that depending on sometimes how many offers are gonna influence the buyer on where they should be. My thought process from representing the buyers, put your best foot forward. Like regardless, right? At the end of the day, and I have seen it. I have been involved on listing and buying side. I've had 2 offers and one comes in a couple thousand over and one 50,000 over. I have had 12 offers and the increments go up in crazy prices. Like, so you could say that it is based on, well, if there's 8 offers, then I can guess that it's gonna go much higher, but it might not. I've had one where I had 4 offers and 3 of them were within $1,000. Like, so I would say to you, it's based circumstantial, situational.
that makes sense.
But I confirm with the agents that I have received their offer. I have now communicated to them when I am going to present. And if I have lawful instruction of how many offers, I can also disclose that prior to, and I can go back, like, so let's say I had offers open to be submitted by 5 p.m. I can go back at 4:30 or 5 p.m. and say, we now have 16 offers. I am going to present in an hour and a half. Would you please confirm that you'd like me to present the offer as is? Or would you like the opportunity, would your buyers like the opportunity to change or amend their offer? And you give them another window. And you, again, that's the balancing of time with that. And if someone wants to change their offer, you can't say that we didn't tell you, and that's what I would say to my buyer. We've been looking at houses. You have your budget. If your budget is 600 and we're looking at this house, and the person we're competing with, his budget is 700, and you're never gonna beat them anyway, because they have more money to outbid you. However, what's this house worth to you, and where do you want to be? Put your best foot forward, because this is the house you're writing on, this is the one you want. And then we go from there. As a listing agent, then I sit down with the offers, and let's say we have 3 offers, right? And you have open for acceptance time on them. You present them to your seller. Your seller can counter one. They can go to this one and say, and counter something, whether it's the closing date or the price. And then the buyer on that one says yes or no, right? So if they say yes, then we've got an accepted offer. If they say no, we move them over. And then, do you want to choose one of these for accepting, or do you want to counter? You can do that. You can't counter 3 of them, because if you get 3 accepted, then you need 3 houses, right? However, there can be a strategy. And again, if you're not familiar, always reach out to a broker and we happily guide you through that process. And then your seller picks one of the 3. You can then put one in place as a backup offer. So you reach out to the agent and say, hey, is your buyer willing to be a backup offer for that house? And if so, then you have to counter that using backup offer clauses. And if you're not familiar with that, that's why you're going to reach out to your broker team, and we're going to walk you through that. And then you can have this one accepted and this one as a backup offer. You can put a backup to the backup if you want. But anyway, that's a whole other strategy of why you do that type of thing. And again, could do a whole class on that, Sherry, but each circumstance is situational, right? I will tell you, because again, even for us old school agents, like pre-COVID, backup offers weren't always that common. I would tell you from a buyer's agent's perspective, your client writes, the seller accepts another offer, they come back to you and say that, do you want to be a backup offer? Your buyer says, absolutely, that's my dream house. I want that. I want to be a backup offer. So then you're going to make sure there's the backup clause. You're also, if you want, going to make sure that there's a scapegoat clause in it so that your buyer can continue to look at properties. Because let's say the due diligence on the first offer is 10 days. So your buyer still wants to look at other properties and maybe they find another property, but you have to have that scapegoat clause in there in order to say, I want to get out, right? You don't go and write another offer with your buyer to see if they can get another house when you have a backup offer in place. Because if this one gets accepted, and while it's getting accepted, deal one of the first house terminates, you now have 2 accepted offers. And you better be sure that your client can purchase 2 accepted offers. Right? Does that make sense? Because otherwise, they find a house that they want, then they've got to terminate this one. They still might not get that house, but you can't play the game of what if, shoulda, coulda. Like, you are the professional and you have to make sure that they only are buying one house at a time. The other thing, Sherry, I'm just going to mention first is so you are the backup offer. Your client was like, yes, I need to be the backup offer. I want to be the backup offer. Number one offer, accepted offers, doing their due diligence, and they get cold feet. They send over a termination to the listing agent. Your offer is in play. There's no, let's think about it. Can we have the night to think? You have an accepted offer as soon as you receive an email or a phone call from that agent. I know that may sound like common knowledge to people, but it's not. And again, if it's backup clauses and backup offers are not something you're familiar with, that's what your broker team is for.
Mm. So the only thing I'll add to that is something that I ran into, being a backup offer, is there was a little caveat to the clause saying that the buyers were free to continue to look at other properties and give notification if they found something that they wanted to put an offer on.
That was the scapegoat clause that I mentioned.
Scapegoat clause, which is so awesome. It's like, yeah, we like you, but we're going to keep looking. We're still dating.
Yeah. And again, for different reasons, there's the different philosophies of, do you put a backup offer in place on your listings or do you go back to market, right? Depending on what the offers were, how many they were, what the interest was on the property. Like, all of those things have to be considered on a situational case-by-case basis.
I have something else about backup offers. This was in our mandatory course. One of the items that came up in it was perception for other buyers when there's like an SOBP or there's something on an offer. It's not this, but it feels similar in that it's one of those low probability situations, like a backup offer may or may not come to fruition. An SOBP may or may not come to fruition because it's conditional. Am I okay to ask that in this moment, or should I wait?
What are you asking? Sorry.
My question is this. There was something in the slide deck that I recall saying that sometimes an SOBP offer could give other buyers the perception that they don't want to offer on the listing because there's an SOBP. I haven't really had that feeling or sense, and I'm just trying to get an understanding of why that might be.
So I would tell you, when I have my house hunting trips for military, my guys are here 6 days to buy a house. So if we go and even look at the house, or sometimes it comes up that it's got a 48 or 24-hour SOBP clause, right? And this is, again, pre-COVID, when we would look at 20 houses and pick one. But
Right.
I would tell you, most military would be like, no, I don't have time for that. Like, I don't have time to do that first right of refusal, right? Because 24 hours is actually works out with that 8-hour period. It's 36. So it's 2 days, right?
Yeah.
Right, we negotiate, we write an offer, we get it accepted, first right of refusal goes back to the SOBP, and we have to wait the 24-hour clause. And now, like I said, you can't, my client can't go and write other properties on other properties.
Right. No,
So.
and that's good. Okay, that makes complete sense to me. I just wasn't, I tucked it away as something I would ask about in a moment.
Yeah,
So thank
and,
you.
No, I can see for us from a seller's perspective, having an SOBP is you've got something on paper, right?
Yeah.
Now, as a listing agent, I want to know what the SOBP property is. So what typically happens is, and I've had it happen, like I've got buyers that are like, they want something specific, right? And they're not going to write until they find something specific. But then they're going to write contingent on the sale of their house. However, their house isn't on the market.
Oh,
As a listing agent, I want to know what's your house, like how long, because some people are giving windows, like I'll give you 6 or 7 days to get the house on the market. You know, so I want to know what it's priced, because I also want to know how long it's going to take, because we're playing with an SOBP, you're playing the domino game, right?
mm,
My client as the listing, I've taken an SOBP, are now waiting on these buyers, right? And they need to sell their house in order for this domino to go. And then we've got, so then are they going to take an SOBP? I can't control that, but are they going to take an SOBP on their offer? Right? And then we've got playing the domino game.
exactly. Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you.
Can I just add in,
Mhm.
buyer's agent? I love SOBPs. I prey on them because there's little competition for my buyers. If we can put a good offer in and that seller will accept it, we virtually have no competition. We can slip in and get that property.
Absolutely. Yeah, from the buyer perspective, yeah, I think there's
Yeah.
lots of good things there. I just wasn't sure on the listing side. So that's really good feedback, Mike.
Well, and again, like it all depends on the SOBP. So typically, like Mike says, typically the buyer who wrote an SOBP needs to sell their house prior to being able to firm up their deal, right? However, some people do it like, and then they have approval, but they put the SOBP in there and they can first right of refusal. They can carry both properties, right? So they can remove their SOBP. Anyway, I feel like, again, it's a whole course that we can do. I feel like, did Ann do an SOBP course? I feel like we have an SOBP course that there's a lovely video that you can watch. Reach out to your broker team. We're happy to talk about scenarios. Again, you know, my big thing is from a buyer or a seller, which we've discussed, is just the professionalism, right? Be a professional for your client, be a professional to other industry members. I think it's very important. I feel like we have gone through all of these scenarios as well. Reach a decision, counter the offer, accept the offer, reject the offer, negotiation, begin the contract close process, which we've discussed. The one thing I would like to point out, there's two scenarios, like as far as whether you're representing the buyer or you're representing the seller. When you negotiate an agreement of purchase and sale, you agree to your condition dates. So let's use April 30th. I write an offer today, it gets accepted April 30th. I understand from a listing perspective that you want to stay on top of things. You want to know when they're doing the home inspection because your client has a dog and they need to get the dog out, and you want to ask those things. However, you also have to realize from the perspective, and you know, it's often mentoring your client through this, is that they agreed to give the buyer till April 30th. So you can't harass and hound. You can ask. You can't harass and hound on the 26th of April saying, where's your financing? Do you have your financing? Where's the financing letter? Like, you can't do that. You agreed to give them until the 30th. I also want to mention best practice as well. I had that as a note. So typically when you're writing an offer, your best practice should be lining all of your dates up to be the same. You should be writing your deposit, your 4.1, your 8.1, and any schedules all the same day. It's best practice so that the ball doesn't get dropped. Other thing for the last year and a half now has been a 408. I would, Ann's suggestion is when you're writing an offer, you draft a 408 as an offer. I have a calendar that I put my dates in, and I have a 24-hour notice that reminds me. So when deposit is due, especially when you get into spring season and you get 3 or 4 deals on the go, it's like I get a notification. We have been seeing, and Ann mentioned this in the meeting the other day, deals dropping on 408, and it's because often agents are remembering the 4.1, but they're not remembering the 2.1 of the schedules. So as a listing agent, it is your job to make sure that although the 408 gets sent over, you actually read it to make sure that the buyer put all of their conditions in that agreement. I would also recommend, for instance, let's say you're working through your due diligence and you come to final day and the bank needs an appraisal. So you are doing an amendment to ask the seller to extend your financing for 4 days. I would always recommend as best practice, I do this, I always pull my 8.1. So if I extend water results or anything, I always extend my lawyer review to go with anything, because let's say there was major issues, again, worst case scenario, then my client has their lawyer review extended as well. Best practice. Any other questions?
As far as extensions go, my idea would be that it would be important to extend the specific thing. So if in the water and septic schedule 2.1, you're extending water quality, but not septic or other things, you can actually specify that all the other things are good, but you're extending 2.1, whatever bit that is.
Sherry, you do know that for the people on here and anyone watching this, you have displayed what a C personality is, right?
Yeah, I know.
Your name starts with a C, and it shows that you are a C. And a C personality, being someone who's highly detailed. She is correct, though, even from a negotiating standpoint. You were right.
This is coming from the broker line, not from me. I'm
And
regurgitating what I've learned.
that's awesome. And responding to the offer, it says to role play. I'm even going to say, as far as time goes, like that's all privy to based on, as the listing agent, how easy it is to communicate with your client. You could have, someone who's gone away for work, that type of thing. But I would point out that your offer is always open till acceptance to the time. So let's say the offer is open till 9 p.m. tonight, and your seller decides they don't want it. However, they don't want to accept that offer. Again, we talked about best practices and communicating with other agents. However, they can counter the next morning. They can have gone to bed and said, oh my God, we should have taken that offer. So you can counter, because it's only open for acceptance. It's not open for negotiations. So technically you would say the deal dies at 9:01. However, you can counter after that deadline. I think we've talked about best practices for this. Recap and ahas. That's on you guys. What do we have for recap and ahas?
I love it all. It's just nice solidifying things back in my brain.
Yeah, again, like, so always provide copies of, I have notes, always provide copies of documents to your client. Keep them updated on the process. You know, you're gonna be probably verbally communicating them, but follow it up with email. For you as the agent, get in the habit of having these systems and having the checklists in place. I know that Jessica's got, see if I can do this, watch, she said escape on this, on her fabulous kwselect.ca website, but this is one of the checklists. So this is from a listing agent as far as like of getting your paperwork in place, the things that you're going to add as far as when you're doing your SDBA and getting measurements and doing the FinTrack. And I think there is also one there for sales. Yeah, sales checklist. So this is the office's checklist. Now, obviously not everything, like a power of attorney document is not going to be required for everything. But at least if you even use something like this to look, it says PCDS. That's for all us old school people, but it's a PDS now. We took out the condition, property condition disclosure statement. Just like an SOBP used to be an SOPP. But having this type of checklist, and I would suggest create your own as you're going through the process, or create one by working with your mentor. I'm sure that most teens have checklists, because again, we get busy. We all know that a for sale sign needs to go up on the property. But when you're busy and, you know, it's better to have a checklist there that say, oh yeah, got to order my sign up. You actually have to order to, before you can dig, if it's in a neighborhood that has natural gas, you got to do that before you even order the sign up. Checklists will save your life. Yeah. Anything else?
Especially important for us older people who have now fog in our brains.
Fog in your brains, and I would, you know, again, I'm culprit of it in the sense that, you know, we've got technology. Like I lived the era before electronic signatures. Like Mike and I used to have to actually drive to Porter's Lake to our listing because they wanted to reduce the list price by $5,000. You physically had to take it out to them, sit at their kitchen table, have them sign it, drive back, bring it into the office, have them change it. Like, it's how old we are. But you know, we also have a transaction coordinator now. So Ella is available. So if you don't have an administrator, but you have trouble doing administrative things, she can be hired on like a deal by deal basis. So you're not committed to paying for an assistant. You can hire her to help you implement checklists and send the paperwork to your lawyers and make sure your clients have that type of stuff. So, you know, when you're looking at making a $7,000 commission, you know, maybe a couple $100 of having someone help you with checks and balances is worth the investment to you. We want to make sure that we're helping agents do all the things that need to be done to longevity in this business. And, you know, again, like we talked about, be professional, and it keeps your life organized. Because don't know if you guys all know this, but typically salespeople aren't highly detailed people that love checklists. We are relational people and we want to be going and making deals and stuff, but getting all of the systems, and the busier we get. So we want to have systems and checks and balances in place so that you can run a very big business and enjoy your life too. I thank you for your time, for joining us. And again, I'm going to say, like, so brokers are here we've got a leadership team that will help. I swear by the administrators in this office. I think they're the best of the best. You know, like, so Jessica's great too, as far as giving guidelines. As far that website she created, I swear, I know I've said this 1,000 times, but www.kwselect.ca has everything. Like, if you have that, even getting in the business and can dig through there and look at stuff, it's so helpful. Anyway, happy April and happy selling, and reach out if you need anything.
Thanks, Susan.
My
Thank you,
pleasure.
Susan. Bye.
Susan, these sessions ebb and flow, and today, man, it was overflowing. You talk fast, and actually studies have shown that people who talk fast are more believable than those who talk slow. So, you know, it was fast paced. You covered, it was like University 101 in real estate. This is a crazy day. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. As my 8-year-old says, you sure do talk a lot, Mom. So I am well aware I can talk a lot, and I guess I can talk fast too. Yeah, so happy to talk with anyone when you need something. So always reach out. Happy
Brilliant.
Friday, everyone.
Thank
Bye,
you. Have a good weekend.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye.